This is New Hampshire Unscripted. I'm your host, Kevin Collins, filling in for Ray Dudley. And we're coming to you from the studios of WKXL at 1450 AM and on FM dial 103.9 in Concord and 101.9 FM in Manchester. And we're also available on nhtalkradio.com. And as always, New Hampshire Unscripted is brought to you by Lakes Region Fence. You can find them at www.lrfence.com in Guilford, New Hampshire. Thank you to Lake Region Fence. I did mention, of course, that I'm filling in for Ray Dudley, and the reason for that is that he is up in Lincoln performing in a musical version of A Christmas Carol playing Scrooge. I had the pleasure of seeing him in it a couple of years ago, and he's a delightful, brilliant actor, and the show is phenomenal. It's great sets, beautiful costumes, etc. And it's at jeansplayhouse.com, Jeans playhouse.com. And the show runs Friday and Saturday at 7:30 p.m., December 13th through the 15th, and on Sunday and Saturday at 2 p.m. And the tickets are available online, once again, at jeansplayhouse.com. All right. When I was on the radio show last week, I did a hour-long monologue, it seemed, rambling a lot for the most part, and I was talking about the evolution of the American teenager. And the teenager is kind of that we know, the idea of an entity that is a teen as opposed to somebody who just happens to be that age. But as someone with his or her own particular likes and dislikes and attitudes, etc., really was a construct of post-World War II, and it was pretty much embodied by James Dean, particularly in his film Rebel Without a Cause. And teenagers across the land saw themselves in him, in the character that he played in that movie, and they began to imitate him. And of course, in many ways, film might have been the central artistic form that teenagers latched themselves onto, but unfortunately he died in a terrible car accident in 1955, and a few months later Elvis Presley popped up, and so rock and roll took over the mantle of what it meant to be a teenager in so many ways. So in a sense, the arts is really where our teens get their inspiration and see themselves reflected, so that they reach out into the to music or to film or to theater to express themselves and to engage with what it means to be a teenager. So, and so we have with us today two highly accomplished theater people, Brenda Laforce, who is a music director, and Ed Tinney, who is a theater director, both high school teachers with a long list of credentials and successes. So, Brenda, you first, if you would just please welcome, of course, to.
Thank you.
And just tell the listeners a bit about yourself and your background.
Certainly. Well, I grew up in a very musical family, and in Madison, New Hampshire, and I went to Kennett High School, where I was involved in anything musical, and I did a little drama there, not a ton. And then I went to the University of New Hampshire, where I was a music education major, focusing on voice. And from there, I ended up at St. Thomas Aquinas High School for 10 years, left to raise a family, and then came back 10 years later and stayed for another 10 years. So, and
your area of expertise is primarily choral, although you've done band and jazz band and full orchestra, etc.
Yes.
And you've won numerous awards with your choral groups, correct?
I have. I had a large jazz background, so I had an award-winning jazz choir. We won the Clark Terry vocal competition, and then my chamber choir, we went and competed a few times at festivals and came home with the top prize, which I'm very proud of them.
And how did you wind up with doing the music directing for the theatrical musicals at St. Thomas Aquinas?
My department head was also the theater director, and she asked me to come on board, and we were quite a good team, in my opinion.
Good. So terrific. Ed, tell us about yourself. You're a transplant.
I am a transplant. So, like Brenda, I grew up in a very musical family in West Texas, a small city called San Angelo. And through my early education, I was always was told by my teachers I had a bit of a theatrical personality, but I never really took it seriously. And in fact, upon graduating high school, I went to the local state university and took a very academic track, majoring in history and focusing on education. So when I moved to New England back in December of '99, I found a place at St. Thomas Aquinas in Dover and got involved in the theater program there through Kate Collins, who, in her very special kind of way, asked me to help out and then asked me to direct. So everything I learned really was just hands-on. I didn't pursue theater as in college, or I never had taken a course in directing or acting. So it was very much hands-on and just learning by doing, which I really enjoyed.
It's very much a commonplace to that teachers say that being a teacher is very much like being on stage. Did you find your experience there to be good training, not just for performing, but also for directing?
Oh, absolutely. You have to think on your feet all the time, and you have to adjust to what you're seeing without hesitation. So, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it gave me really the confidence to organize large groups of people in meaningful ways and to anticipate problems that may arise. But yeah, I think as teachers, we're always, when we're in front of a class, we're always on in that way.
Yeah. And I imagine you have to gauge your audience.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have to be able to respond to the ways in which they change. And I guess that sort of leads me to the next question, which is and some of the things that I referenced when I was on the radio show last week. How the students have changed. I mean, when I first started teaching in the mid-1980s, and that was Gen X. The kids in front of me were Gen X, and they were different than me. And I had to learn to bridge the gap between them and me. But since then, it's gotten to the point where even that has changed probably 8 or 9 or 10 times since 1985. Have you had the experience of the kids changing, not just in your classroom, but changing on stage in the kind of plays they're interested in, or the kind of ways that they interpret their roles, etc.?
Oh, hugely. When I first started doing the productions, or even just music rehearsals in general, the focus was very intent. They were very creative. They thought outside the box, There was not the distraction of the phones. It was they were very intellectual, creative minds, where fast forward to 15, 20 years, their attention span is much smaller. You have to break things down into smaller sections to rehearse. Like before, you could do like a whole scene or a whole song, where now you have to break it down to segments and work it out that way, because they just don't seem to have the attention span. And then as far as rap, they're so influenced by what they're hearing and what they're seeing. It's hard to get them excited about going back and doing old, great, original pieces. They want to do all the contemporary, which they're great. The contemporary shows are fantastic, but it's nice to have a mix of the two so they can see how they evolved. The contemporary shows evolved from. But they're very fixated on the current and the now. And even in the tone production, like as far as the singing goes, they want so desperately to sound like Billie Eilish, which I like Billie Eilish, don't get me wrong, but the breathiness in her tone, you can't do that on stage. You're not going to be heard. You're not going to be in tune. Like, there's just so many drawbacks to trying to sound like someone else as opposed to finding your own voice.
Interesting. Did you find the same thing?
I think probably the thing I've noticed more than anything else is how busy students are today. They want to do everything. I mean, the generally the type of student who will come out for a drama production is invested in, their own interests and looking forward to the future, and they're all looking to build a resume. So, I think they find it really difficult to commit to, say, 6 hours, 7 hours of rehearsal a week, and constantly have, other commitments coming up.
Right. As Ray says, we'll put a pin in it right there. Once again, this is New Hampshire Unscripted, and we're coming to you from WKXL 1450, 103.9 FM in Concord, 101.9 FM in Manchester, and nhtalkradio.com online. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is New Hampshire Unscripted. I'm your host, Kevin Collins. We're coming to you from WKXL 1450 AM, 103.9 FM Concord, 101.9 FM in Manchester, and online at nhtalkradio.com. We're speaking with Brenda Laforce and Ed Tinney, who are both very experienced theater and music directors from high school. And we were talking about the way that that students have changed over the years in terms of what kind of shows they like to do, how they respond to the shows, etc. And Brenda, I thought you said something very interesting about the idea that they tend to be more reactive than creative.
Yes,
I think I do recall some of those years, and there's many students that I remember St. Thomas Aquinas having an improv group. And how, for several years, there were just this unending stream of creativity. Just sort of, one year just seemed to disappear.
Yes.
And it wasn't that the kids were less smart. They're just that whatever, the kind of things that floated their boat changed. And I wondered if, when you said that the students wanted to sound like Billie Eilish, they're probably not aware how much technology
I know.
goes into. They're not. A Billie Eilish, I'm sure. I don't know her background, but I'm willing to bet she probably did not start out by doing coffee houses and things like that. She probably, went right into a studio somewhere and learned things. So let's talk about one of the things that I was always fascinating to me when I would go to the New England Theater Conference. Sessions there when I was first teaching and directing at high school, was the single most popular programs, the single most popular sessions were how to put on a show. So for both of you, what are the things that go into your planning and your decisions to try something or to arrange a program, to give it a theme, or to choose what play you want to produce? How much of it is your likes and how much of it is just what you have to work with?
Well, the number one thing I have to look for is, what do I have for students in the room? Mm-hmm. So first I look at their voice parts, I look at their talent level, and it's going to change year to year. So, but if you don't program to what you have, you're not going to set the students up for success. So you have to be really careful about making sure that what you are giving them, although it's good to challenge them, but it has to be achievable, because there's nothing worse than giving students music that they are going to fail. Not because they're not talented, but because they don't have the right arrangement in front of them. So that's the first thing, is always looking at the voice parts and the students you have in front of you. And then from there, I personally like to have a variety of music at all times, just because students, they need to be exposed to all the different genres. And they may not like everything, but they need to know where kind of the evolution comes from. And the same thing goes as far as like picking a musical production. You know, if I only have sopranos and altos and one bass, doing Guys and Dolls is not going to work. So you have to be very careful, you know, and really look at, and you don't want to pre-cast a show before you audition it, but you need to have kind of a good idea of, okay, if I do this show, I do have the people to fill the parts.
Yeah, I would echo that on the dramatic end, is that you always have to know, as Brenda said, what your talent pool is. It's something like a crystal ball. You know, you're kind of thinking this number of students will come out for a production. And then, of course, demographically, the challenge is 20 years ago, I might have 45 students come out for a fall play. And I think the last one I directed, I had 8 students. We have fewer students today, demographically, but also they're pulled in so many different directions. Always looking at the numbers, and of course I think the same would go for musicals, as the balance is always going to be more heavily female than male, and playwrights prefer to write plays for male roles.
I imagine that it must be difficult to find the balance between, okay, this is something that will get the kids excited, but this is something that the kids will learn something from.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how do you make that decision? Or is it just simply a roll of the dice, or is that you say, okay, this year I'm doing something challenging, next year we'll do something fun?
First of all, it's all going to be fun.
Right. All the time.
All the time. But I think alternating, you know, kind of throwing them a bone, if they invest this year in a harder rep, you know, something that they're not as familiar with, something that they may not like as much, when they know that, okay, next year we're going to do something contemporary. And then if you kind of rotate between the genres, then they can expect it, and they'll follow through knowing that in the future, you know, eventually they're going to get to that contemporary one that they want to be involved in.
I think another challenge is, you know, when you're dealing with anything that is truly contemporary, then brings up a whole other set of issues.
Oh yeah.
Language, situations. I mean, if you're going to do a serious drama that, you know, is less than a decade old, you're going to have to deal with those situations. And I think some districts manage to do that, and some don't.
Yep. It's interesting. You said that about the kids getting themselves spread thin.
Yeah.
And not only one of the things that I've talked about before is that it's not just a matter of the kids being spread thin, playing soccer, doing this and doing that, and their time it seems to be slotted and pre-planned. But something else that I think happened over the years was that the most talented kids were being pulled away because there are a number of semi-professional youth groups in the Seacoast, I'm sure that's true in other places in New Hampshire, who are drawing off the most talented kids, which is fine, but you know, you don't want to deny them. But it used to be a case where if you had your most talented kids, the whole idea of a rising tide lifting all boats. I mean, did you find that in the years that you were?
I'm not sure that I felt that as much. I mean, the theater, you know, these theater groups tend to have more resources than we would have had. Students love costumes. They love big sets.
Yeah.
They like nice performance spaces, as we all do. What I found is that most of these programs deal in children's theater, and the students would be well trained in performing that particular way. And I would find that I had to direct it out of them.
Interesting.
Because they would have a particular affect in the voice, in their delivery, that was really predictable.
I found, and first of all, I love the area theaters. I love to go see them, but I found, as far as the music department goes, I had a lot of conflicts where the organizations were very inflexible, and if you were a part of their production, you could not miss anything. And I would have students that had worked really hard on their concert material that all of a sudden couldn't go to the concert, which left us with a hole because, you work as a team and then all of a sudden, your top tenor isn't there anymore. So I found it difficult for, not in the theater aspect, but in the music production, like our concerts. And then on the other end, and this didn't happen all the time, but I found that some of the singers picked up really bad habits. So they were trying to emulate the adult voices that they were hearing, and so they were picking up habits that were not age appropriate for them. So trying to get them to then, blend as part of a choir or not hurt their voices, it became kind of a challenge. And I've had some students develop nodes based on their local theaters because they over singing and not singing or producing the sound properly. So that was concerning to me at times.
Interesting. It seems to me that some of the best things to be learned would be to be learned in a place that is operating on a shoestring budget. I mean, and you've had to build your own sets. Yes. You've designed programs, etc. And so that there was. I remember at one time people saying it's amazing that you would do so much with so little. I said, well, we're able to do so much because we have so little. We have to be creative. Yeah. And I think I think you're right. As wonderful as it is to be part of a program or a theater that's got a big budget that has all these things, learning how to do everything from you build your own sets and design your own lights gives a great deal of benefit, I think.
Oh, I agree.
So, another question. If you had, speaking of resources, unlimited resources and an ideal cast, what is your dream musical, your dream play? And you can have more than one. There's no limit here.
That's a hard one.
That is a tough question.
It really is. I am drawn to the music of Stephen Schwartz. So, and it seems cliche since it's so hot right now, but Wicked would be so much fun to do. I just love anything Stephen Schwartz.
All right, we'll be back in a minute, and we'll hear Ed's input on that one. This is New Hampshire Unscripted. My name is Kevin Collins. I'm coming to you from WKXL 1450 AM, 103.9 FM in Concord, 101.9 FM in Manchester, and online at nhtalkradio.com. We'll be right back. Welcome back to This is New Hampshire Unscripted, and we're coming to you from the studios of WKXL 1450 AM, 103.9 FM in Concord, and 101.9 FM in Manchester, and online at nhtalkradio.com. My guests today are Brenda Laforce and Ed Tinney, and we were just speaking about their dream show, and Brenda said that she liked anything by Stephen Schwartz besides Wicked, which would probably be very difficult to do. Nobody's flying from the stage. But any other Stephen Schwartz besides?
I've always wanted to do Pippin. I love when I was in, I guess, junior high, the high school did it, and they did like 13 performances of it, and my brother was in the pit, and I think I went to all 13 of them, and I know it so well, and I just love it.
It's interesting. That's a musical that I don't think people do anymore. I mean, I recall when I was in high school and college that it was huge. With what's his name? Ben Vereen, I think, was in it on Broadway. But that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And Godspell, the newer version of Godspell. I love the music of it. It's so creative, and we actually were in the production of it, or we had started rehearsing it pre-COVID, and then we had to cancel our production, so we never actually got to see it through. But we had started it, and it was going to be very good.
An interesting thing, a lot of the local area community theaters had difficult time recovering after COVID.
Yeah.
Because something broke, there was this long, continuous, line of whatever, and then suddenly all this went out the window, and some places are having a difficult time getting back to their pre-COVID levels of interest. Anyway, Ed, your dream show.
Well, I think I would come back to a show I directed more than a decade ago. Called Our Town by Thornton Wilder. And I chose it for admittedly selfish reasons, because it has virtually no set, and I'm thinking, this is going to be easy. It was probably one of the most difficult productions that I've ever directed, but also probably the most rewarding one, because everything is on the actor. They can't hide behind anything, and I think my students, the students in that production, I remember them very, very fondly, and I think they learned a tremendous amount about just the art of acting, that it's more than just walking on and walking off. And interestingly enough, the pantomimes were probably the most terribly difficult thing, to do it realistically, and to do it with thought and intention. So there were so many elements involving, and I learned so much about the craft of acting through directing it, and I think my students got a lot out of it. And I think it's a timeless play. I mean, it's a timeless message about all the things we never pay attention to, and which I think is the sort of the realm of poets and artists.
It's an interesting point, because I remember the scene where I can't exactly remember which of the actresses, when she dies, she wants to go back and live a day. She said, "Don't pick an important day. Pick a day that was just ordinary."
And the incredible thing in that scene, closing night, we had her in an old wedding dress, and it split completely down the back.
Dear.
And the cast came together, took care of it. No one knew any different.
That's great.
That's great. One of the great things about learning this stuff.
I think one of the fortunate things about being in theater is that you have a lot of those moments that you never forget, and the students never forget. Although I wish, if I had my druthers, I would like to have been Thornton Wilder, because that play is done so often that the royalties must be, filling like a Scrooge McDuck. You could dive into his vault full of gold coins.
That's true.
I wanted to shift a little bit, and in so many places and in so many ways, the first things that get cut whenever the budgets come to play are the arts.
Yes, they are.
So, talk about your feeling about why the arts are important in so many ways, not just to give the students an opportunity to shine and to take their bows, but to become better adults, better human beings. Thoughts on that?
Oh, many thoughts on that.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I have quite a few as well.
So, I mean, first of all, it's going to build confidence, and if you don't have confidence, you're not going to be successful.
Right.
And it promotes collaboration, it promotes teamwork. It is important in developing your emotional connection to things, how you're relating to people, creativity. I mean, if you aren't able to think outside of the box.
Exactly. I mean, it's problem solving.
It is. That's a perfect way of saying it. Communication skills. I mean, there's just so many layers upon layers upon layers, and the musical aspect, like how music and the developing brain and how it's going to connect you, and also it's a lifelong skill.
Right.
So. And I love watching my son play baseball, but he's not going to be able to play baseball other than, on a little league, where anyone in my choir, they can sing in their Seacoast, the Choral Society or the Manchester Choral Society when they're older, or the town bands. Like, you're always going to be able to hone that skill and take part and still play and sing on.
And I certainly think it's, Kevin, you mentioned something about something broke during the pandemic, and I see it in my classes every day, this inability or confusion about human interaction. And when you're in a dramatic or a musical production, you're forced to deal with other people, and you have to react to them. You have to inhabit someone else. And so I think in that regard, it furthers what it is to be a human being. And I know so many I had so many students who would have loved to have been in the play, but they were involved in athletics, and they're about as inflexible as anyone. And I used to tell them, well, in the theater, you learn everything you do in sports, but you get better words and better music to go with it.
That's very good. That's very good. I do like that. I like that image. If you had mentioned, you had both mentioned that I don't know, necessarily the classics or the traditional or the standards are a big part of should be a big part of a student's arts education, mainly because in so many ways those earlier works, whether we're talking about plays, we're talking about music, were written not necessarily to make a buck. They were written because the playwright or the librettist or the composer were philosophers as well. I begin to think, I begin to wonder, if you were to have in front of you a group of students that you thought could become better individuals, would you give them a Shakespeare play? Would you give them an operetta like Student Prince or something? I don't know. I can't think. I mean, do you have any ideas on that? Do you think it would be more instructive for the kids to do Hamlet than it would be for them to do something that was about, say, like I know that we did Footloose, right. Show about being a teenager, about expressing your creative side, despite what the mainstream thinks. Or am I barking up the wrong tree on that?
I'm not so sure. I mean, I've always been a big believer in Ralph Waldo Emerson and his theory that something eternal must appeal to the vertical and not the horizontal. That it has to appeal to all ages, all times. I did try a few productions, and they were successful, I thought. The characters were teenagers, and the setting was a high school. But I think it's really too close to them in some ways. They're so close to that experience, they can't put any objectivity to it. Does that make sense?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. We'll be right back. This is New Hampshire Unscripted. I'm your host, Kevin Collins. We're here with Ed Tinney and Brenda Laforce. We're coming to you from WKXL 1450, 103.9 FM Concord, 101.9 FM in Manchester, and online at newhampshiretalkradio.com. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is New Hampshire Unscripted. I'm your host, Kevin Collins, filling in for Ray Dudley. We're coming to you from WKXL 1450 AM on your FM dial 103.9 and 101.9 in Manchester and online at nhtalkradio.com. I just want to once again repeat about Ray Dudley. He's appearing in Christmas Carol, the musical ghost story, up in Lincoln. Please make a note to check out jeansplayhouse.com and buy your tickets to see Ray. And so, for this last segment, I wanted both Brenda and Ed to talk about things that interest you in them, like what's up for you right now, what are you doing, and what would you like to do, what's anything you'd like to talk about with regards to it.
Oh, I've got so many different things going on. I'm teaching a 4th and a 5th grade choir, which is a whole new situation for me. But I'm also teaching at SNU their private voice and piano students and their vocal ensemble. So I've got the spectrum of age groups here. And then I have some private students that are in the high school level. And then, so I'm still, even though I'm not in a high school anymore, I'm still very active in the music education world. And I'm doing some guest conducting. So I'm the guest conductor for the Jazz All-State Choir this year, which was at Pinkerton Academy in February. So great festival. And it's jazz, which brings me to, that is my absolute favorite art form to sing, although I do sing classically and occasional some pop, and love to sing musical theater with my friend Ed here. But one of the reasons I love jazz so much is because a lot of the rep comes straight from the Great American Songbook, which is all the classic musical theater songs, just sung in a different style. So everything is so interwoven. But one of my exciting things that I'm venturing into is I have recently been certified in sound therapy using tuning forks, and I have my Reiki master. So I've opened up a studio in Rollinsford, New Hampshire at the Salmon Falls Mills, and it's called Tuneful Reiki, and I do Reiki and sound therapy, and I do a combination of both, and it's a beautiful, relaxing.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. Ed has gone.
Give a testimonial for that.
Yes. So if you ever wanted to try energy healing, definitely check it out, Tuneful Reiki.
Would you mind just explain to the audience what Reiki is as a form of...
So Reiki is a Japanese technique for stress reduction that promotes healing. And it's very relaxing. It's you just are open to receiving energy from the universe, and it really does promote healing. It's hard to explain. It's a kind of a metaphysical technique, but it really is successful. I know I work on my father weekly, who's had some medical issues, and he swears it's one of the only things that gives him relief from the pain. So you've been able to merge your musical background with this Reiki thing. Yep. It's a music hath charms to soothe the savage breast. Yes,
very much true. And Ed, what's up for you these days?
Well, I have to give a plug to the school I teach at, Timberlane Regional High School in Plastow, New Hampshire. A great group of 4 towns that are very supportive of the arts. We have an student improv group. We do several productions a year. We have a thriving band and orchestra program, choral program. They, and they're very involved in the life of the school, and I'm very happy to be there. And I've been asked to, if I would like to get involved, so that's something I'm considering. But right now I'm just kind of getting used to things at my new place.
How many students at Timberlane?
Now you've put me on the spot.
A lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
I think it's close to 900.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a sizable school.
Another thing, besides being experienced directors and musicians and actors, etc., you also would have insight about theater and arts and movies and TV shows. I'm just asking your recommendation for the audience of the best 2 or 3 TV shows or movies out there that you would recommend they go to see.
Oh, goodness. Well, I actually just saw Wicked this weekend, and it was very good. I have to say, I was incredibly impressed with Ariana Grande, because if you listen to her pop music, she sings with that very breathy tone, and she was classically trained, and she's using her voice in the right way, and it's fabulous. She did a great job. Other than that, I haven't seen any movies in a long time, although I have to say, being this season, I'm looking forward to watching a little Love Actually.
Is that your Christmas go-to movie?
It is one of my Christmas go-to movies, I will say.
Do you watch Die Hard?
Oh, my husband does. Okay. That will be on, that's for sure.
And how about you, Ed?
Oh, well, I mean, there are definitely some films I'm looking forward to. The new film with Ray Fiennes playing Odysseus.
Odysseus.
Which is it's called The Return, I believe.
Interesting.
I'm not sure if that's the title, but
I thought you were going to say Conclave.
Well, it's streaming, but I'll pass on that one. And Nosferatu, of course, I'm really looking forward to.
Oh, really? So, wow. Okay,
yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, films for adults.
Yeah. There's
I'm kind of had my fill of superheroes and
I have to admit the Marvel Cinematic Universe has sort of run its course, and I couldn't follow up the other ones, and but yeah, I understand that. I've been telling people that if you have Netflix, you have to make a point of watching. I'm sorry, I'll just drew a blank on it.
The Diplomat.
The Diplomat. Thank you, God. With Kerry Russell and Rufus Sewell. If you get a chance to watch it, it is spellbinding. The cast is terrific. The writing is terrific. It's very much like the old West Wing. That kind of moves. It moves that well.
I keep waiting for another mayor from.
What was
it, mayor from
Easttown?
Easttown. Yeah.
I think there are some people that I think, as you said, you could listen to them read from the Yellow Pages.
Yeah, that's Kate Winslet.
Yeah, Kate Winslet. Saoirse Ronan. The people that I enjoyed just so much. But any special plans for the holidays for you guys?
We're hosting, and both sides of the family, and they're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're not, so that's a good thing. And I'm just hoping for a lot of downtime.
Okay.
Those early morning commutes are.
All right. Well, good. Thank you so much. And as I'm just getting ready to wrap up my stint here as the sit-in host for Ray Dudley. I want to thank the station. I want to thank Ray, and I want to thank everyone who's been involved. Steve, the engineer, right now, and Andrew in the mornings when I've been here, and Kat, who's the station manager. It's been terrific, and I've really enjoyed it. So, thank you so much, and have wonderful holidays. We'll see you online at some point. And don't forget that our sponsor is Lakes Region Fence. You can find them at www.lrfence.com, and they're in Guilford, and they have a huge inventory, and they'll come out and do free estimates for you. So be sure to check them out for all your fencing needs. Once again, this is New Hampshire Unscripted. And we're coming to you from WKXL 1450 AM, 103.9 FM in Concord, and 101.9 FM in Manchester. Please have wonderful holidays and stay safe out there on the roads as you drive to visit your families.